After 6 seasons in the NWSL, English international and former now Houston Dash forward Rachel Daly is going home. The Houston Dash and Aston Villa announced today an official transfer for Daly to join Aston Villa FC for an undisclosed fee. It was referred to within both news releases from each respective club. But maybe catching some folks off guard just because of the caliber of player and the longevity of this player. In NWSL specifically, you're talking about Rachel Daly, an English international who was drafted by Houston Dash in 2016 and has been with them throughout the entirety of her professional career to date. So a number of interesting points within this. Obviously, the undisclosed amount is probably up there for some folks who try to pay attention to transfer news specifically. And number two might also be the fact that this was something that was, via request, quite frankly, that was brought to light within the club release via the Houston Dash, specifically with their club president, Jessica O'Neill, saying that the transfer will result in Rachel being much closer to her loved ones, a request that we wanted to make every effort to honor. We're deeply grateful for the commitment and loyalty she's shown to the city and wish her the best in her next adventure. So yeah, I think it's one of those bit of news dumps that happens, and it sort of maybe catches people off a little bit, but as it sort of settles in and you get more information about this type of move, you just sort of say, okay, well, if this is just sort of a mutual decision and parting of ways, then best of luck to the next chapter.
That's a perfect way to describe it, because when I saw this news drop, I was like, wow, she's leaving Houston. And then immediately I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Like, not that she's leaving Houston, but the fact that she is going home. She's going to play in England. She, as you mentioned, has been with not just the NWSL, but with Houston Dash for 6 years. And before that, she played college football at St. John's University. So she's been in the States for 10 years. That's a really long time to be away from home. And as someone who does travel home frequently, she plays with the English national team. So the Lionesses, so she is home and she just won the Euros. Like, she's really riding high at this point in her career, where when she was drafted, I can't imagine that she thought she would spend the next 6 years in the NWSL in Houston. But now the fact that she is going to Aston Villa, she will be in the Women's Super League, which is huge, a club that could definitely use her. I know you and I were talking about it for Houston, and in college, she played forward and she was a striker. I had the privilege, I'm going to say, of defending her in our Big East Conference matches. She is a beast to defend.
Speak on it, Lisa. You got some insider info, I guess.
They were conference rivals, played against Rachel Daly for a few years, and she is a very good forward. But when she plays internationally for country, she plays defender. She plays an outside left back. So after this trade happened and we saw this announcement, it was kind of like, okay, where is she going to play? Is she going to be a forward? Is she going to be scoring all the goals? Or is she going to have a bit more of a defensive role like she does when she's wearing the English jersey? And head coach for Aston Villa came out and said that as much as we like her on the defensive side of the ball, we're going to put her in the attack. Don't worry, she'll still be scoring goals. So
I love that.
That's got to make her happy for sure. As much as she loves playing anywhere, she likes to score goals. She likes to be the attacker that sneaks in around, gets back shoulders. This is huge. Yeah. We are joining you live if you're listening to this as a podcast, but we are live on YouTube right now. And there's a lot of people in our chat right now asking some questions. And Sandra, I know you mentioned this before, but Lee Slater mentioned that he's a UK fan and he understands that Rachel Daly was under contract with Houston Dash. So does that mean Villa has to financially compensate Houston or the NWSL? What are your thoughts on this one?
Well, shout out to Lee. Thanks for the question. I think, this isn't unfamiliar. Like when we've seen in recent like transfer news between between women's soccer clubs. It's often an undisclosed fee. It's not something that's usually out there in terms of actual number figure on that. But I'm going a lot based off of assumption because of the undisclosed amount and sort of just the limited knowledge that I have in terms of the contract of Rachel Daly with Houston Dash. She was a player that was under contract with the Dash, a player that had recently re-signed and sort of extended, a contract and had an option year within there. So I'm sure with, the request from Daly to the Dash to want to make that move, to want to be closer to home, there were probably a number of conversations about what that would mean for Houston directly with Ashen. So I'm going to say that it was club to club versus league to league when it came to the decision making around getting to move this player who wanted to be back closer to home.
Yeah, for sure. And with this kind of looking at where Houston is right now in the NWSL standings, they are doing pretty well. They're number 3 in the standings. They're on a bit of a ride and a tear right now. They've added Ebony Salmon to the mix, and they've been without Rachel Daly for weeks because of training for the Euros with the English national team, and then winning the Euros, huge, being a European champion. So they've settled into not having her. So it's kind of, I'm going to say bittersweet for Houston fans, because I bet in June, the last time you saw Daly play, you weren't thinking that that was the last time she'd be in an orange jersey playing in front of fans in Houston. So that's definitely something that's bittersweet. But really, the positive news out of this, so much positive news. Rachel Daly's going home. She's going to be playing in England. And the best part is Aston Villa plays in the Women's Super League. Women's Super League is coming to CBS Sports. It'll be on Paramount Plus. We'll be talking about it here on Attacking Third. The season kicks off literally so soon, but it's around the corner. And we've got a lot planned for the start of the WSL season. But everyone that is a Rachel Daly fan and knows her from the NWSL, don't worry, you can still watch her on Paramount Plus. Have no fear about that. I think that's a huge positive for everyone involved that loves Rachel Daly and likes watching her play.
Yeah, it's coming up quick. September I think is marked on a lot of people's calendars to try to see all this action and play. And that was, I think for you and I, doing what we do here in this show and in this space, that's immediately where our heads are. We're like, well, we're not gonna stop watching Rachel Daly play. She's just gonna be playing with a different team in a different league, and we'll be able to see her still score some goals. And I love that. I love that within Aston Villa's press release specifically, they had manager Carla Ward addressing that. Like that was going to be one of the big maybe questions that people had. Like, what does this mean positionally for Daly and Aston Villa? And she said, hey, look, it's going to be going fullback to back to forward. We want to see her scoring goals for us. I love that they sort of kind of addressed that right away in this announcement. So I'm excited for it. I think we've been doing a lot of fun things, covering a lot of different types of women's soccer in general on Attacking Third. And, obviously with our audience and our show being stateside and, broadcast to a lot of American audiences, having the opportunity to talk about and discuss different leagues, different clubs, and players within those teams is something that really excites us in general. So the fact that there's going to be even more exposure to a different league via Paramount Plus, I'm very, very, very thrilled about. So hyped for that. Can't wait to hopefully see Rachel Daly score some goals, but not in orange. It is a little weird. I'm not gonna lie, it's gonna take some getting used to. She's been rocking Houston Dash orange for so long. Really, for all of her career since she started, said, hey, I'm gonna go pro.
She's really been the face of Houston. This is a huge change, but I'm loving this. This is a good move for her. A good move for her to go home. I think the international travel will be a little bit easier for her now when she does get called up to the national team. And for Villa, they need her too, right? They finished last year at the end of the Women's Super League. Not a winning season. They were 6-13, 3 ties at the end of their Women's Super League season. So this is a great grab for them, getting someone that can score goals, put them potentially on the plus side of that goal differential as they head into the 2022-2023 Women's Super League season. And Rachel Daly is the player to do that. We saw her do it at Houston.
Yeah.
Become that goal scoring player, the face of the team on and off the pitch, in the locker room, be the player that everyone leans on. And now she gets to do it at home in England.
Yeah, and this isn't going to be, the first, the first sighting of Rachel Daly in WSL. I mean, she had a very brief loan with West Ham United during that 2021 season, kind of post Challenge Cup, after making some history there with Houston Dash, and scored a couple goals over the course of a handful of games. And that's the type of impact that kind of player can make for your team, even if it's just sort of in a short kind of window, able to automatically kind of boost the profile of a team on the pitch. So I would imagine that this signing is going to do that for this Aston Villa side. But I also really love that, outside of multiple club releases from each respective franchise here, that Daly also took the time to have her own kind of personalized farewell to Houston on her respective kind of social media channels. And I love that she kind of talked about this current Houston Dash team specifically, because for you and I, going back into July a little bit, when we talked about that wild summer of soccer and how much we loved it, and covering all aspects of that we had wondered, hey, when will we see Rachel Daly with the Dash again? And that was just out of genuine curiosity in terms of, what you go through as a player when you go through those types of very high competitive, international, high stakes types of tournaments. And it turns out we're actually not going to get to see Rachel Daly for one final match, with the Dash. And I think obviously if you're on the fan side of things, that's tough to imagine, but there are plans to honor Daly and sort of give her a little bit of a send off. But they've been going through a really good run right now, this Houston Dash side, and that includes making that signing for somebody like Ebony Salmon to go ahead and boost. Again, we're talking about boosting the profile of the team, but sort of giving that other attacking option for Houston. But they're sitting pretty in the upper half of the table. You're talking about a Houston Dash side that's third in the standings at the moment and are on pace to make some more history with their club. And I love that Daly kind of recognizes that in her kind of, departure, in this statement that she makes online. Said, hey, my teammates, you've been on an incredible run past couple of weeks. I'm so happy for each of you. I have no doubt you'll become the first Houston Dash team to reach the playoffs, and I'll be your number one fan from afar. And, that sort of speaks to her character a little bit, but it also speaks again to that type of competitive level that we know exists within NWSL. This is a Houston Dash franchise that was one of the first expansion franchises in the league in 2015, and up until their recent success out of post 2020 Challenge Cup, their best season was in a 2015 where they just narrowly missed out on the playoffs. It was hard to think that from then to now, this franchise's best season was considered a playoff miss and a fifth place finish. And then now you've got a trophy to your name as 2020 Challenge Cup winners. And right now they're a bit on pace to go ahead and close out this season with their first ever NWSL playoff appearance. And that's huge, so it's kind of hard to imagine that if the Dash continue this very impressive run and this hot streak in their sort of final, 7 or 8 weeks here, that they will make that playoff appearance, and it will be without Rachel Daly. It's a lot, so I love that she mentions that within this farewell.